Well, thank you for helping organizing this seminar where we should reflect on 10 years of experience with ESDP and then sort of think somewhat ahead in the future. Starting immediately where Javier ended, agreeing very much with where he ended, not having very many disagreements with how we got there either, by the way. But I think one striking thing at the moment is that we have a severe supply-demand mismatch at the moment. The demand, as Javier pointed out, the demand for Europe across the world is increasing. The demand for our operations, for our policies, for our voice, for our presence. I think that is striking. Javier was with the ASEAN nations in Phuket, I was in Kabul, and Javier was there previously, and I was in South Caucasus, and wherever we go, they say we want more of Europe. Whatever that means, it means somewhat different things. But the demand is greater than the supply that we're able to achieve. So severe demand-supply mismatch at the moment, and I think that is something that we must deal with. Going back 10 years, we were still in very much in the Balkans. I mean, the CFSP was born in the Balkans once upon a time, and the ESDP was born in the Balkans. I think you can probably say that the CFSP was born in Bosnia and the ESDP was born in Kosovo. When the decisions or the discussions were there, it was the immediate aftermath of the Kosovo War, 78-day bombing campaign, more than 1 million refugees, serious political problems of where we were heading. I mean, we hadn't a clue where we were heading at the time, to be absolutely precise. And then the decision was taken by the Europeans, who felt that this had been too much of an American show, and they decided to go for the headline goals in Helsinki. Now, the headline goals at the time were coming out of the right instinct but the wrong policies, I would say. Because one thought at the time that our major problem in the Balkans had been our lack of military capabilities. While I would argue that our major problem in the Balkans had been our lack of the software of policies. If you've got the software of policies right, then the instruments normally follow. And you'll need less instruments than if you don't have the software of policies and have to compensate with a lot of instruments. And of course the decision was taken in Helsinki to go for the headline goals, which was really the capability to be able to conduct an Army Corps level operation somewhere in the world at a fairly short notice. Now, an Army Corps is nice to have, but what we've learned is that that is really too small for a serious war and too big for a stability operation. And hardly surprising, what we've seen during the last 10 years is that there's never even been a talk of using a Corps-level operation of the sort that was envisaged in the headline goal. So we started with something that was coming from the right instincts, but not necessarily the right instruments in that particular respect. We've since developed different capabilities. Javier alluded to the, I think, 22 operations that have been undertaken since then. They've all been of a somewhat different nature, but they've all been on a smaller, quicker scale than what was envisaged in 1991. If we look at the situation now, and the world looking ahead, I think we can say that the world is now more difficult, more demanding, and to a certain extent more dangerous than it was just a couple of years ago. The security and defense policy, you can divide perhaps into two different components, the external security and the homeland defense. And I will leave the homeland defense out of it, but we should not be forgotten. When we discuss the policies that we're discussing here, we are discussing what we would like to do in the outer part of the world in order to prevent threats from developing against the homeland, that is the 500 million Europeans for which we have an immediate responsibility. The classical homeland defense is, of course, the territorial defense. And then we go to the Article 5 operations of NATO. That's how most of the member states of the European Union take care of the classical defense function, the territorial defense. Whether that is the thing that is most relevant in the future, that is an irrelevant discussion, because we want to have that security guarantee at the bottom of things. But we have other things that are developing that are somewhat outside of we are discussing within the classical ESDP. We have the cyber defense needs that are beginning to be even more important. A lot, increasing parts of our societies are dependent upon the smooth functioning of cyber systems. And there are developing cyber attack capabilities, not only by states that are operating them, but also by independent networks, and they can have devastating effects to our societies. That's a homeland defense function that we need to address in the years to come, not only in the national level, but also perhaps on the European level. We have the question of, which is very much in the media these days, of infectious diseases that could originate somewhere else, but affects us. Now that requires global response mechanisms, and we have them to a certain extent. The WHO and the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta, and we are developing the European instruments to a certain extent. But I'm saying that we should not neglect both the classical and the new homeland defense, and terrorism should be mentioned as well. Both the classical territorial defense and the new homeland defense functions that must be there. They also belong in the discussion about the future of the ESDP. But then, of course, our focus is primarily on the external security policies, where we try to further the security of Europe by promoting the stability of the rest of the world, and primarily the world that is adjacent to us. And we do that by trying to promote the development of what we call well-governed states in the periphery and increasingly widely defined periphery of the European Union. We started in the Balkans, and we are still busy in the Balkans. We have, during the last year, developed or launched the concept of the Union of the Mediterranean, which at the bottom, at the end of the day, is about our security. And the Eastern Partnership, which at the end of the day is about our security as well. Promoting the well-governed states in the periphery of the European Union in order to increase our security, to prevent threats or challenges to our security from developing from these particular areas. But if we go beyond those particular policies and those particular areas,